Well, hello, folks. Greetings and salutations to you. I hope you're well. How's everybody doing tonight? Well, we're going to do something very, very different. Um, and I hope that you'll bear with us. I hope that maybe you'll enjoy it. This is something I've been talking about doing for a long time, but I haven't actually done it myself. Why? I'm not really sure. I mean, it'd be an excellent showcase of my voice. But sometimes you just have to do something different. I can't. I'm trying. I'm trying so hard to actually just enjoy my night, but I've had some personal things come up, and I know that there's part of me that would love to play a video game tonight, but I can't focus enough to play. And I hate feeling like this. This is one of those things I hate feeling like because it's so distracting that I can't play a game. So we're gonna do something else. We're not gonna play a game tonight. Instead, we're gonna read. And I know I could get in a lot of trouble for doing what I'm doing tonight. And if that's the case, we'll delete it. I am perfectly okay with deleting what I do tonight. So, what you see tonight might be a one night only situation. This might not happen again. It might not. Maybe it will. Maybe it'll be something else entirely. But tonight, we are going to sit and we are going to read. And if you're curious what we're going to read, we're reading The Tree Mothers. I know I don't have like the best screen for maybe reading to you guys. I'm not really sure how we do this. This is an interesting conundrum right here. Like, is this the proper forum to be reading? Yeah. Yeah, I think that's what we're going to do tonight. Yeah. I think I forgot that there's this huge, beautiful piece in here. All right. Yeah, I'm really putting out the feelers tonight. Yeah, we're getting out some feelers here. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. We're getting ready with our book. People listen, they listen. If they don't, they don't. I guess that's really on them, isn't it? I know what I'm doing. Mm-hmm. Let's see here. Let's see here. I don't know if that's the one I want. We are trying here. Yes. 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 Okay. Yes. The others. The other posts I need to make. The fuck is that? Like that Hyperion mother. Anybody anywhere else be posting? It's been, I guess I didn't mean like, yeah, let's do it, Bob. Yeah. No. 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 All right. I mean, if kind of posting as many as I think would actually care. So I guess we go from there. I wish I had more somber music though. Um, I feel like that's all a little too relaxing, like too upbeat. Like I get the upbeat thing. It's just I don't think the upbeat is what I need tonight. Let's do the no, that'll work. we go. Don't know why that happened. There we go. Yeah, that works. Okay. Okay. Well, I guess this is what we got. All right. Well, let's enjoy a nice book then, yeah? Winner of the 1999 Bram Stoker Award for Illustrative Narrative. All right. I know I can absolutely get in trouble for this, but that's why this is a one-time thing. This stream will not be retained. This stream will not be retained. It is a one-time event. One-time event. One-time event. It will not be happening again. Woohoo. Woohoo. All right. Well, shall we begin? The Sandman, the Dream Hunters. A monk lived in solitude beside a temple on the side of a mountain. It was a small temple, and the monk was a young man. And the mountain was not the most beautiful or impressive mountain in Japan. The monk tended the temple, and he passed his days in peace and quiet, until the day that a fox and a badger passed the temple, and spied the monk, hoeing the little plot of yams which fed him for most of the year. The badger looked at the monk in the temple, and he said, "Let us make a wager."
Let us make a wager. Whichever of us succeeds in driving that man from the temple will keep the place as a whole. For it has been many years since pilgrims or travelers came to this temple, and it will be a finer place by far to live than a badger's set or a fox's den.
The fox smiled with her sharp teeth, blinked her green eyes, and she swished her brush. And she looked down the hill at the temple and the monk. And she looked at the badger and she said, "Very well. A wager it is."
Each of us will take it in turns, said the badger. I shall go first.
Down in his little garden plot, the monk hoed his yams. Then he went down on his knees and he weeded the wild onions and the ginger plants and the little patch of herbs. And then he cleaned the mud from his hands and his knees, and he went into the living quarters at the back of the temple to prepare for that evening's devotions. That night the moon hung full, huge and silver, in a night sky the color of a ripe plum, and the priest heard a mighty commotion outside his door. There were 5 men in the courtyard, richly dressed and mounted on 5 great horses. They were hairy men. Their leader held a great curved sword. "Who serves in this temple?" he called, in a voice like thunder. "Let him show himself." The monk came forward into the moonlight, and he bowed deeply. "I am the unworthy guardian of this temple," he said simply. In a skinny, unimpressive runt of a priest you are," boomed the leader. "But who among us can account for the will of the gods? Truly was it that said that those who seek after fortune find it as elusive as grasping a rainbow, while those who disdain good fortune in the world often find it beating upon a gong outside their door." To this speech the young monk said nothing, but he raised his hand a little. As he looked at the horseman in the moonlight, his sharp eyes that missed nothing at all. Well, do you wish to know what your good fortune is?" "Certainly," said the monk. Know then that you have been sent for by none other than the Emperor himself. You are to travel as fast as you can to the Imperial Palace, where the Emperor wishes to speak with you, and to confirm that you are indeed the person of whom the augurs and diviners have told him. And then you will be raised from obscurity and appointed to minister to the needs of the Imperial Court, a position which brings with it great fortune and mighty estates. However, know also that if you do not present yourself at the Imperial Palace before the next day of the monkey, then the auguries go from the good to very bad, and the Emperor shall regretfully be forced to issue your death warrant. Therefore wait not a single moment, but depart this place before dawn, or risk the Emperor's severest displeasure. The horses stamped their feet in the full moon's light. The monk bowed low once more. I shall leave instantly, he said, and the 5 horsemen grinned. The moonlight gleamed from their eyes and their teeth, and from the metal bridles and decorations of their horses. But before I leave, I have one question to ask. And what would that be? Said the leader in a voice like a tiger's roar. Why, the Emperor would send a badger to tell me to come to the Imperial Court, said the monk, who had observed that while the first 4 horses had the tails of horses, the last one had the tail of a badger. And with that, the monk began to laugh, and he began to walk back into the temple to begin his evening devotions. There was a clattering from the courtyard as the riders rode away, and from the mountainside came the yip 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 of a fox, high and vicious and amused. The clouds covered the mountaintop before midday the next day, and they were dark, full clouds, so it came as no surprise to the monk when the rain began to fall, a hard, drenching rain that bent the bamboo and flattened the young yam plants. The monk, who was used to the weather on the side of the mountain, remained at his devotions and did not stir. Not even when the lightning started. A blinding whiteness, followed by thunder so loud and so deep it felt as if it were being wrenched from the very heart of the mountain. The rain redoubled. It sounded like the beating of 100 small drums, such that the monk could scarcely hear the sound of weeping over the pounding and rattling of the rain. But he did hear someone sobbing, and he went out into the courtyard, where he saw sprawled upon the ground, where the earth ran like muddy soup, a young woman soaked by the rain. Her robes, which were of the richest silk, were sopping and clung to her body like second skin. The monk was painfully aware of the young woman's beauty, and her body as he helped her to her feet and walked beside her to the temple where they could be out of the rain. The only daughter of the governor of the province of Yamashiro, she told him. And as she stood beside the small brazier, wringing out her garments and her long black hair, I was traveling with a party of women and guards towards this very temple. We were attacked by brigands. I alone escaped, and overheard them say that when this rain lets up, they are going to ride up this mountain to the temple and burn it to the ground and kill anyone they find here. While she spoke, she ate a bowl of the monk's rice and a small bowl of yams, gobbling her food hungrily, and she stared at the monk with bright green eyes. Therefore, she said, let us flee this place, never to return, before the bandits come, for if we stay here, we shall both perish. And if we are separated, then you should make your way to the province of Yamashiro, and ask for my father, who is the governor, and has the finest house in the province, and he will reward you mightily. Thank you for the rice. It was very good, although the yams were perhaps a little dry. We must certainly leave immediately, said the monk, with a gentle smile playing at the corners of his lips. If you explain one thing to me first. And what would that be? Asked the girl. Explain to me how it happens that the daughter of the governor of the province of Yamashiro happens to be a fox, for I've never seen eyes like yours on a human's face. At that, no quicker than it takes to tell it, the girl jumped over the little brazier, and when she landed, she was no longer a girl, but a fox, with its coat sleek and its brush held high. And it darted the monk a look of utter disdain before it leapt upon the stone wall and ran along it, to the shade of an old bent pine where it paused for a moment, before vanishing into the storm. Later that afternoon the sun came out, and the monk was able to walk around the temple picking up the blown leaves and the fallen branches, and repairing the damage of the storm. He was beginning to perceive a pattern here. So he was not entirely surprised when several nights later, as the sun was setting, a troop of demons shambled through the woods to surround the little temple. Some of them had the heads of dead men, and some had the heads of monsters with yellow tusks and staring eyes and huge horns. They set up such a clamor that you have never heard.
"We smell a man," they shouted. "We scent man flesh. Bring out the man, and we shall eat him. We shall roast his heart, vitals, and brains, feast on his eyes and his cheeks and tongue, swallow his liver and his fat and his testicles. Bring him here."
And with that, several of the demons began to pile high the fallen branches the monk had gathered, and they breathed on them with their fiery breath until the branches began to smoke and burn. "If I do not come out," said the monk,
"Then we shall come back every night at sundown,"
screamed the demon with a head like a flayed bat,
"and make a tumult until finally our patience at an end. We shall burn down your little temple, and we shall pluck your charred body from the ashes and chomp it down eagerly with our sharp teeth." "So flee!"
shouted another demon, its face that of a drowned man, flesh swollen and eyes blind and pearl-like.
"Flee this place and never come back."
But the monk did not flee. Instead, he walked out onto the courtyard, and he picked up a burning brand from the fire. "I will not leave this place," he said, "and I am tired of these performances. Now, whatever you are, fox or badger, take that, and that," and he began to lay about him with the burning brand. In a moment, where before there had stood a horde of demons, there was nothing more than a fat old he-badger, who scrabbled and began to run away. The monk threw the burning brand at the badger and struck him on the rear, burning its tail fur and singeing its rump. The badger howled in pain and vanished. At dawn, the monk was half awoken from his sleep by a whispering voice from behind him. "I wish to say sorry," said the voice. "It was a wager between the badger and me." The monk said nothing. "The badger has fled to another province, his tail burned and his dignity in shreds," said the girl's voice. "I shall also leave if you desire it, but I have lived my life in a den above the waterfall by the twisted pine, and it would hurt me to leave." "Then stay," said the monk, "if you will play no more of your foolish fox tricks upon me." "Of course," whispered the whispering girl's voice behind him. And soon the monk returned to his dreams, and when he woke properly an hour later, the monk found fox footprints on the matting of his room. The monk caught sight of the fox from time to time, slipping through the undergrowth, and the sight of her always made him smile. He did not know that the fox had fallen violently in love with him. When she came to tell him she was sorry, or perhaps before, when he had picked her up from the muddy courtyard and taken her inside to dry herself to the fire. But whatever it had happened, it was unquestionably true that the fox was in love with the young monk, and that was to be the cause of much misery in the time to come, much misery and heartbreak, and of a strange journey. And we'll continue after the break. See you folks soon. Oh boy. About to start chapter 2 when we come back from the break. All right, let's see here. It'll take me a minute for my break to start. I was trying to hold off on starting chapter 2 until our break runs. Okay. There we go. All right, ad break is going. So we'll get ourselves lined up for chapter 2 when we come back from the break. Oh shit! Did I launch something? Yes, I did. Of course I did. I'm a fucking dumbass and I launch shit because I'm clumsy. Oh boy. Ugh. Oh boy. What does a related book mean? Anyway. Welcome back, everybody. Thanks for joining me again. We're going to continue this one-night event where we're reading. Because, maybe that'll be something fun we can do. Maybe not necessarily fun, but at least relaxing and enjoyable. Just because something can be enjoyable and it doesn't mean it's fun. I find reading enriching. Doesn't mean it's fun. But here we are. Welcome. We're reading The Dream Hunters tonight by Neil Gaiman. This is probably a one-night event because I'll get in trouble for reading this. Probably receive some kind of a copyright strike. Might even be muted already. I don't know. But here we go. Welcome. Appreciate y'all being here. Chapter 2. Now, in those days, there were many things walking the earth that we rarely see today. There were ghosts and demons, the spirits of all kinds. There were beast gods, and little gods, and great gods, and they were all manner of entities, beings, and wraiths, and creatures, both kind and malevolent. The fox was hunting on the mountainside one night, after the moon had set and the night was at its darkest, when she saw by a blasted pine tree several bluish lights gleaming. Quiet and quick as a shadow, she slipped towards them. As she approached, the lights resolved themselves into strange creatures, neither alive nor dead, which glowed with the flickering blue of marsh grass. Glowed with the flickering blue of marsh gas. Creatures were talking to each other with low voices.
"So we are commanded,"
said the first creature, blue flame glistening on its naked skin.
"and the monk shall die."
The fox stopped moving then and concealed herself behind a clump of ferns.
"Aye,"
said the second, its teeth sharp as tiny knives.
"Our master, who is Yin Yang diviner of great power from his studies of the stars and of the patterns of earth, has seen that, come the next full of the moon, either he or the monk shall be dead. If it is not the monk, then it must be our master." "How then shall he die?"
asked the third creature, its eyes shining with blue flame.
"Hush! Is there anything listening to our counsel? For I feel eyes upon me."
Fox held her breath, pushed her belly down into the earth. Still. Three creatures rose higher into the air and stared down at the dark woods.
"There is nothing here but a dead fox,"
said the first creature. A fly alighted on the fox's forehead and walked slowly down to the tip of her muzzle. She resisted the urge to snap at it. Instead, she just lay there, eyes unfocused and blank. A dead thing.
"This is what our master intends,"
said the first of the creatures.
"For 3 nights running, the monk shall have evil dreams. On the first night, the monk shall dream of a box. On the second night, he shall dream of a black key. On the third night, he shall dream that he unlocks the box with the key. When in his dream he opens the box, he shall lose all connection to this world, and without food and without water, he will die soon enough. His death will not be held at our master's conscience."
And then he looked about it once more.
"Can you be certain that we are not overheard?"
A fly crawled onto the fox's eyeball. She did not blink, although the tickling felt like madness in her mind.
"What could hear us?"
asked the second of the creatures.
"A fox's corpse?"
And it laughed high and distant.
"But it would not matter if someone did hear us,"
said the first of them.
"For if someone did hear us, and spoke of what he heard to another, no sooner would the first word leave his mouth than his heart would burst in his breast."
A cold wind blew over the mountaintop. The sky began to lighten in the east.
"But there is no way the monk can escape his fate,"
said the third.
"Only one way,"
said the second. The fox strained to hear another word, but there was nothing. No more words were spoken. All she could hear was the whisper of the wind as it stirred the fallen leaves, the sighing of the trees as they breathed and swayed in the wind, and the distant ting-ting of wind chimes in the little temple. She lay there stiff as a fallen branch until the sun was high in the sky. Then she swished her tail and snapped at the ants who were crawling over her paw. She made her way down to the side of the mountain until she reached her den. It was cool in her den, dark, and it smelled of earth. and in the back of the fox's den was her most precious thing. She had found it several years before, tangled in the roots of a great tree. So she had dug and chewed and dug some more, for days until she had it out of the ground. Then she licked it clean with her pink tongue. And she had polished it with her own fur, and she had taken it back to her den, where she venerated it and cared for it. It was her treasure. It was very old. It had come from a far country. It was a carving of an old dragon, carved from jade, and its eyes were tiny red stones. The dragon brought her comfort, and in the gloom of her den its ruby eyes glowed, casting warm radiance. The fox picked her treasure up in her mouth, carrying it as gently as she would have carried one of her own kits. She carried the statue in her mouth for many miles, till she came to a cliff at the edge of the sea. She could hear the seagulls screaming above her, and the pounding of the cold waves on the rocks below her. She could taste the salt on the air. "This is my most precious possession," she thought, "and I give it up. I give it to the sea, and all I ask is the knowledge of how to save the life of the monk. For if I do nothing, he'll dream of a box, and then a key, and then of a key opening the box, and then he will be dead." And then she nuzzled the pale jade statue over the cliff edge, gently, and watched it tumble hundreds of feet into the churning sea. And she sighed, for the little statue of the dragon had brought serenity and peace to her den. And then she walked the miles back to her den, and tired, beyond all imagining, she slept. This was the dream the fox dreamed. She was in a barren place of gray rock and brown rock, where nothing grew. The sky was gray as well, neither light nor dark. Poised on a great rock in front of her was a huge fox, jet black from the tip of its muzzle to almost the end of its tail, which was as white as if it had been dipped into a paint pot. It was bigger than a tiger, bigger than a warhorse, bigger than any creature the fox had ever seen. It stood on the rock as if it were waiting for something, and its eyes were dark pits in which distant stars glinted and burned. Fox clambered and sprang from rock to rock until she stood in front of the Fox of Dreams, and she prostrated herself in front of him, rolling over to show him her throat. "Stand," said the great fox. "Stand and have no fear. You gave up much to dream this dream, child." The fox got to her feet, and in her dream she was not shaking, although she was more scared than any little fox has ever been. "My dragon," she asked. "Is it yours, Lord?" "No," he told her, "but it was lost long, long ago by one whom I called friend. Back before the true dragons left this place to swim in the sky, my friend lost the statue, and it troubled him. Now the sea shall wash it back to him, and he will sleep more peacefully at the bottom of the great deeps with the rest of his kind until the next age of the world." "I am honored and grateful to have been permitted to be of service to your friend," said the fox. They stood there in silence for some timeless moments in the dream place, where the tiny fox and the great black fox. The little fox looked about the rocky waste. What are those animals?" said the little fox. They were the size of lions, and they snuffed about the rocks, their long noses snuffling and rooting in the barren ground. "They are Baku," said the great fox. "They are the Dream Eaters." The little fox had heard of Baku. If a dreamer wakes from a dream of ill omen or a potent of dark things, the dreamer may invoke the Baku, in hope that the Baku will eat the dream and take it, what it foretells, away. She stared at the Baku, and they moved across the rocky desert of dreams. If one were to catch a Baku, after it had consumed a dream, laughed the fox. What then? The great fox said nothing for some time. In the hollow of an eye, one distant star glittered. Baku are hard to catch and harder to hold. They are elusive and crafty beasts. I am a fox, she said, humbly and without boasting. I am also a crafty beast. The great fox nodded assent, and he looked down at her, and it seemed to the fox that he could see something she was, everything she dreamed and hoped and felt. He is only a human, said the great fox. While you are a fox, these things rarely end happily. And the fox would have told him what she thought of this and opened her heart to him. With a flick of his tail, the great fox leapt from the rock down to the desert floor below. And it seemed to the fox that he grew, and he grew, until he was the size of the sky, and the huge fox was the night, and stars twinkled in the blackness of his coat. And the white tip of his tail was the half-shining moon in the night sky. I can be crafty, said the little fox in the night. I can be brave, and I would die for him. And the fox imagined that a voice in her head was saying almost tenderly, Then catch his dreams, child, as she awoke. The sun was golden of the late afternoon, and it burnished the wood as the fox stepped into the brush and made for the little temple, stopping only to devour a large frog she found at the edge of the stream and to crunch it down, bones and all, in a couple of mouthfuls. Then she drank the cold, clear water of the mountain stream, lapping at it thirstily. When she came to the little temple, the monk was chopping firewood for his brazier. Remaining a safe distance from the monk, for his axe blade was sharp, she said clearly as people talk, May you dream only May you dream only propitious dreams in the days to come, dreams of good omen and great fortune. The monk smiled at the fox. I am grateful for your wishes, he said, although it is not for me to know if my dreams shall be dreams of good fortune or otherwise. The fox stared at him for some time with her green fox eyes. I shall not be far, she said at length, should you need me. And when the young monk looked up again from his firewood, she was gone. Chapter 3. Between chapters, we're going to take short breaks so that, give you a chance to stretch, enjoy yourself a moment. So I will pick it up here. We'll give it like a minute and a half break. We'll start on our next chapter here. Ugh. Okay, let's see here. Let's take a look at some things here real quick. You know what? Let's see if we can do this. least provide something to look at, right? That'd be nice if we at least provided something to look at while we're doing this. Let's do this. Trying to figure out a better way to do this. No, screw it. Let's do it like that. There. There. That's what we'll use. So, let's get back to our story, shall we? Chapter 3. Far to the south and the west, in his house in Kyoto, the master of yin and yang, the Onmyoji, burned a lamp at the small table, on which he had placed a square of painted silk, and upon it a lacquer chest and a black wooden key. Arranged according to the 5 cardinal points of the compass were 5 small porcelain plates, upon 3 of which were powdered matter, upon 1 of which was a bead of liquid. On the last plate there was nothing at all. The Onmyoji was a rich man. He was a high official in the Bureau of Divination, and many sought his advice and his favors. The governors of many provinces were grateful to him, and believed that his influence and his fortune-telling had given them their fortunes and their high positions. He had the ear of the chancellor and the ministers of the right and the left, but he was not a happy man. He had a wife who lived in the northern wing of his house, who ran his household judiciously and efficiently, and treated him in every way as a wife should treat a husband. He had a concubine who was barely 17 and who was very beautiful. That's a trigger warning. So, sorry about that. I guess I should have read ahead of time. Her skin was as pale as the palest plum blossom, and her lips were dark as plums. His wife and his concubine lived together under the same roof, and they did not quarrel. The Onmyoji was not a happy man. He lived in what was widely said to be 17th finest house in Kyoto. Spirits and demons of the air, Oni, and Tengu alike were ordered by him, and they would obey his orders. He could remember every detail of 2 of his previous lives. As a young man, he had traveled to China to study, and he had returned with his hair prematurely gray, with an unequaled knowledge of portents and omens. He was respected by those who were his superiors and feared by those who were his inferiors. But, with all this, the Onmyoji was not happy. And this was because the Onmyoji was afraid. Ever since he could remember, since he was a tiny child, he had been afraid. In everything he learned, every scrap of power he obtained, he had gathered in the hope that it would drive away the fear. But the fear remained. It waited behind him, in the heart of him. It was there when he slept, and there to greet him when he woke in the morning. It was there when he made love, and it was there when he drank, and when he bathed. It was not a fear of death, for in his heart he suspected death might be an escape from the fear. And there were days where he wondered if, by his arts, he And there were days when he wondered, as if by his arts he were to kill every man, woman, and child in the world, that the fear would be gone. But he suspected that the fear would still haunt him, even if he were alone. It was fear that drove him, fear that pushed him into the darkness. The master of Yin Yang sought knowledge from the defilers of graves. He met with misshapen creatures in the twilight, and he danced their dances, and he partook of their feasts. On the outskirts of the city, where thieves and brigands and the unclean lived, the master of Yin Yang kept a dilapidated house. And in that house there were 3 women, one old, one young, and one who was neither young nor old. The women sold herbs and remedies to women who found themselves in unfortunate situations. It was whispered that unwary travelers who stopped in the house for the night were often never seen again. Be that as it may, no man knew of the Onmyoji's involvement with the 3 women, nor of his visits to the house on those nights when the moon was dark. In his head and in his heart, the Onmyoji was not an evil man. He was frightened, and the fear stole from the joy from any moments of pride or happiness and leached the pleasure from his life. One night, several weeks before the events previously related, when the moon was at its darkest, he had asked the 3 women in the dilapidated house the questions that troubled him most. The wind blew through the broken screens and howled in the rotting eaves.
How can I find peace? How can I find peace?
Asked the oldest of the women. Oh, sorry. I read that wrong. That's my bad. How can I find peace? He asked the oldest of the women.
There is peace in the grave,
she told him.
In a momentary peace in the contemplation of a fine sunset.
She was naked, and her breasts hung like empty bags upon her chest, and on her face she had painted the face of a demon. The Onmyoji scowled, tapped his fan to his palm, palm of his hand impatiently. Why do I have no peace? He asked the youngest of the 3 women. Because you're alive, she told him, with her cold lips. The Onmyoji was most afraid of the youngest of the 3 women, for he suspected that she was not alive. She was beautiful, but it was a frozen beauty. If she touched him with her cold fingers, he shuddered. Where can I find peace? He demanded of the woman who was neither young nor old. She was not naked, but her robe was open, and down her chest curved 2 rows of breasts, like the breasts of a she-pig or a rat, her many nipples black and hard like so many lumps of charcoal. She sucked the air in through her teeth and held it in, and then, after too long a time, she exhaled and she said,
province of Mino. Many, many long days of travel from here. In the north, in the east, on the side of such and such a mountain is a small temple. It is of no little importance that has but one monk tending to it. He is afraid of nothing, and he has the peace you desire. Now I can weave it so that when he dies you will gain his strength, and you will fear nothing. But once I have woven, you will have only until next full moon to cause his death, and he must die without violence, without pain, or the weaving will fail.
The Onmyoji grunted, satisfied. He fed her several small delicacies with his own hand and stroked her hair, and told her that he was satisfied with this. The three women withdrew into another part of the tumble-down house, and when they returned again, it was almost dawn, and the sky was beginning to lighten. They handed the Onmyoji a square of woven silk, pale as moonlight. On it was painted the Onmyoji and the moon, and the fine young monk. The Onmyoji nodded, satisfied. He would have thanked them, but he knew that one must not thank creatures of their kind, so he placed their payment on the floor of their house and hurried home to be there before daybreak. There are many ways to kill at a distance, but most of them, even if they do not involve direct violence, involve the infliction of pain. The master of Yin Yang consulted his scrolls, and he sent his demons to the mountain where the monk lived to obtain for him things that the monk had touched. That was where the fox had overheard them. And here and now, the Onmyoji sat in front of the little table with the lamp upon it, then the lacquer box, and the key. One by one, he added a pinch of the substances in the little porcelain plates to the fire of the lamp. A pinch for each of the 5 elements, and the final pinch was from the last thing the demons had stolen, the moonlight. It was from the plate with nothing on it, which contained a scrap of the monk's shadow that the demons had stolen from him. With each pinch of powder, the Onmyoji added to the flame, and it burned higher and brighter. And when he added the final pinch of nothing, which was the monk's shadow, the flame burned so high it filled the Onmyoji's chamber with light. Then it was gone, leaving the room in darkness. The Onmyoji kindled a light and was pleased to observe that on the silk square that covered the table was a pointed stain, as if something dead had been laying there over the face of the young monk. He observed this with satisfaction, then went to his bed and slept for the night peacefully and without fear. He was, for that night, content. In the monk's dream that night, he was standing in his father's house before the father had lost the house, and all he owned in his disgrace for his father had had powerful enemies. His father bowed to him, then the monk remembered. In his death, that the father had died by his own hand, and he had remembered that he, the monk, was still alone. He tried to tell his father this, but his father indicated without words that he could not listen to anything his son could tell him. Then he produced from inside his robe a small lacquer box, and he held it out for his son to take. The monk took the enamel box, and his father was no longer there, but he gave no thought of this. For the enamel box took all his thoughts, although in his dream he thought he saw a flick of a fox's tail through an open door. He knew there was something important inside the box, and that something was needed to see. But the box resisted with all of his efforts to open it. And the more he tugged and pried, the more frustrated he was. And when he woke, he felt troubled and discomfited? Wondering if the dream was an ill omen or warning. If it was an evil charm, said the monk, then maybe a Baku will take it. Then he rose and went out to bring water and begin his day. On the second night, the monk dreamed that his grandfather had come to him, although his grandfather had died choking on mochi, a small rice cake, when the monk was a little more than a baby. They were standing on a tiny island. There was more than a black rock in the sea. His grandfather stared out into the sea with blind eyes, and the seabirds wailed and cawed over the head of the sea wind with the splash of the spray. Jesus. Her grandfather opened one old hand to reveal a small black key. Small as a mechanical toy, he put his hand forward. The monk took the key from his grandfather. The seagull screeched 3 sad descending notes, and the monk would have asked his grandfather what they signified, but the old man had gone. The monk held the key tightly and looked about for something that the key would fit. The island was barren and empty. The monk walked about the island slowly, seeing nothing. And when it came to the monk that he had been watched in his dream, he looked around him. There was nothing in his dream, save for the distant seagulls and a tiny figure on the distant cliff, which might, the monk thought, might have been lost. He woke with his hand about a non-existent key, still feeling that the eyes of a fox were upon him. The dream was so real that later in the day, as a cold wind approached, the first red and orange leaves from the maple tree into the temple's tiny vegetable gardens, where the monk was tending the white and yellow gourds that grew in profusion, he found himself looking about him for the key, and only slowly realizing that he had never touched or seen it in the waking world. That night, the monk expected another dark dream. He closed his eyes before something at the door, and then he slept. But for the first part of the night, he dreamed of nothing at all. And in the second part of the night, he dreamed he was standing upon a bridge, watching the camps swimming placidly under a fish pond. One of the carp was purest silver, and the other carp was purest gold, and it made the monk happy to watch them. He woke, certain that the dearest dream was a good omen. He was relieved that the days of dark dreams were done with, and he was smiling happily as he climbed from his sleeping mat. The monk's good mood remained until he stumbled over to the body of the fox. Her eyes closed, stretched out upon the threshold of the temple. That's the end of chapter 3. It's about halfway through the story. Where are we? Okay. Oh, I need a stretch. Give me a moment. Oh. Oh boy. Well, I hope this is actually enjoyable. Especially for me kind of doing this out of nowhere. Okay. All right, let's get our next. I'll start chapter 4 then. At first, the monk believed the fox was dead, and then as he squatted beside her, he perceived that she was breathing, so shallowly and slowly that one could hardly tell that she was breathing at all, but still, she was alive. The monk took the fox into the tiny temple and set her down beside the brazier to warm herself. Then the fox read a silent prayer for the Buddha, the life of the little fox. For she was a wild thing, thought the monk. She had a good heart, and I would not see her die. When I was a boy, said the monk to the unconscious fox, before my father's disgrace, I would, from time to time, run away from my nurse and from my teachers. Then I would go to the market, and they sold live animals in bamboo cages, and I saw all manners of beasts, foxes and dogs and bears and small monkeys and pink-faced monkeys, hares and crocodiles, snakes and pigs and deer and herons and cranes and bear cubs. And what I see that makes me so happy and that I love animals. It always makes you sad for it hurt me and see them imprisoned like that. One day, after the merchants had packed on their waves and game for the day, I found a broken cage. Yeah. Oh, excuse me. A baby monkey. Too scrawny even to have been sold for the pot, for it was dead, or so someone must have thought. I perceived that it lived, and so I concealed it in my breast and made my way to my father's house. I kept the monkey in my room. I fed it scraps and saved from my own. He grew my little monkey. Soon he became almost as big as I was, for he was my friend, and would sit on my persimmon tree outside of our door waiting for me to return. Our father tolerated the monkey. All went very well until one day a certain lord came into the house to see my father. This monkey seemed to go bad. He refused to let the lord approach my father. Instead, he swung down and barred his way, baring his teeth, then showing his check, acting as if the lad were a rival enough for my armor for some of these. Goodness. Okay, baring his teeth and showing his chest, acting as if the lord were a rival in another tribe of monkeys. The lord gestured to one of his retainers, who pulled out his bow and put an arrow through the monkey's chest. Although I begged him not to, I carried the monkey out of the house and looked into my eyes as he died. Later, when my father was disgraced, it was through the machinations of their self-same lord, and sometimes I think that the monkey was not a monkey, but a spirit sent to Amida Buddha to protect us. And it would have done if only we had listened and seen. But this was long ago, little fox before I was a monk, in a life that is dead to me, but still we learn. And perhaps with all your lock tricks, perhaps you also wish to protect me. Then the monk said a prayer to Amida Buddha, and another prayer to Kishibojin, who was a demon before she encountered the Buddha, and guards children and women. Into Dainichi Niyori, and lastly he said a brief prayer to Binzuru Harada, who was the first of the Buddhist disciples, and the Buddha had forbidden to enter Nirvana. He said these prayers, all those entities improving their aid in their intercession for the little fox. Oh my goodness, my mouthful. For the end of all this prayer, the fox still lay limp and stiff on the matting like a dead thing. Oh my goodness. Ugh. Oh, sorry. I need a moment to stretch here, folks. Okay. All right. No, no. You know, maybe sitting here and reading is helping me realize just maybe how exhausted I am. Good idea for me to get some sleep tonight. So you know what? We've read the first 3 chapters. Yeah? Did you guys like that? Is this something that you would want me to do again? Like, if this is something that people want me to do, I'm happy to do it. Hopefully maybe I can find a more entertaining way to go about reading it. But I think we're going to listen to our body, and since it wants us to go to sleep and wants us to get some rest, I think that's exactly what I'm going to do. So, yeah. Take care, everybody. I'll see you soon.